So yesterday I decided to let my metaphorical demons win and bought myself a copy of the latest Doom game, The Dark Ages, so I could ignore my responsibilities for a while longer killing literal demons. And so far I've really enjoyed the first level.
Only one problem. Right there. To be continued. I hate cliffhangers.
Yeah, that first 35 gigs to make the game playable apparently only equates to roughly 25 minutes of playtime. And while I'm currently writing this, I'm waiting on an 8-hour download time for the rest of the friggin' game to install. Which brings me to the topic of this little rant, in that, why am I paying so much to buy a physical copy of Doom the Dark Ages if the fucking game isn't even on the disc?
But he's right.
While yes, my lack of knowledge about this fact is partially my fault, as I hadn't followed much of the news about the game, since I wasn't planning on buying it at launch, so I missed the reports that only about 100 megabytes are actually on the disc, which basically executes the download. The whole reason I bought the disc was because I'm currently living somewhere with agonizingly slow internet, and I apparently stupidly believed I could just install the game from the disc. But no. Instead, I essentially purchased a case with a disc that functions as a digital serial code. And more annoyingly is that this is now the second time this has happened to me recently, as I picked up a copy of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle when it finally launched on PS5, only to discover that only about 20% of the game was actually on the disc, and I had to download the rest of it. And both of these are titles from studios that are owned by Microsoft.
And that sometimes it doesn't just work.
There's already so much discourse online centered around the importance of games preservation, which this definitely poses an issue towards, but there's also been a lot of debate around the rising prices of video games, due in no small part to the many rumours circulating around Grand Theft Auto 6. And these two rather big release games that I've bought with mostly empty discs, I think is a bit of a worrying precedent, and one that does not make any fucking sense to me. I don't want to be paying $150 for GTA 6 and only getting half the game on the disc. I'm a big lover of collecting physical media, and my collection spans across all 5 generations of PlayStation. And part of that love is the knowledge that I've got all these games on discs, and I can pop them into a console and play them either instantly or after a short install time. Heck, physical media was there for me when I was doing my video on the Golem game, where I was able to access the launched version of the game from the PS4 disc, after I realised how heavily patched the Steam release was.
Fair enough.
Even when I've had fast internet, I still prefer to buy a disc and install a game from there, and I cannot for the life of me understand the logic behind selling a physical release of a game and not actually having said game on the disc. The only other time this has happened to me personally was with the Spyro Reignited trilogy back in 2018, where only the first game in the trilogy was on the disc, and you had to download Spyro 2 and 3 after the fact. The silver lining in that case was that at least there was a full game on the disc, but it was still a stupid and shitty thing to do that made absolutely zero sense, since the trilogy as a whole is only about 50 gigs. The Crash Bandicoot N. Sane trilogy on the other hand did include all 3 games on the disc, which made the Spyro Reignited trilogy only having 1 game feel like a slap in the face. Now you might say, well, the Spyro trilogy was bigger than the N. Sane trilogy, which is correct. Crash was around 26 gigs, whereas Spyro was around about 50. And I even saw a few people on Reddit trying to claim the reason the Dark Ages isn't on the disc is because of how big it is. But that doesn't make any sense when there are so many examples of games with similar and even larger install sizes managing to fit on a disc. Let's take a look at another trilogy. Uncharted, the Nathan Drake collection, sits at around about 46 gigs as well, and yet all 3 games are playable from the disc. Heck, even Uncharted 4: A Thief's End came on a single disc, and that's about 64 gigs. These 2 games that Microsoft doesn't actually want to put on the discs are 120 gigs and 85 gigs for Indiana Jones and Doom the Dark Ages respectively. Fairly big games, sure. Still makes absolutely no fucking sense when Final Fantasy 16 is 100 gigs and that comes on 1 disc. Same with Alan Wake 2, which is around 90 gigs. There are also many games that have been released with 2 discs as well, due to their large install sizes. Let's have a look at them, shall we? Cyberpunk 2077 on PS4 has a base install of 70 gigs, and it comes on 2 discs. Red Dead Redemption 2 is around 110 gigs, and comes with 2 discs. Mass Effect Legendary Edition is all 3 remastered Mass Effect games on 2 discs, at around the 100 gig mark. The Last of Us Part 2 is also 90 to 100 gigs, and they shipped it on 2 discs. God of War Ragnarok on PS4 is also about 90 gigs on 2 discs. Horizon Forbidden West, once again, is a similar size and comes with 2 discs. Final Fantasy VII Remake on PS4 is around the 100 gig install Mark II, and you guessed it, comes on 2 discs. But get this, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which launched last year on PS5, is double the size of Doom the Dark Ages at about 160 to 170 gigs, but it was also shipped on 2 discs.
Each sentence so rife with information. Go on, please.
When you factor all this in, it shows that shipping an entire game on 2 discs, hell, even one if you know what you're doing like with Alan Wake 2, is entirely feasible and achievable. Meaning that the only real thing I can think of is that some arsehole over at Microsoft or ZeniMax is trying to save just a few dollars in distribution, and I really hope people start boycotting their future physical releases because of this. I don't know how many people were quick enough to cancel their pre-orders for Doom before launch, but I hope it made a dent in their sales because this is honestly a stupid practice to try and push. Again, what's the point of buying a physical release of any game really if that game is not actually on the disc in a playable state?
That's a question. That's a question. Oh, buddy.
Imagine buying a copy of your favorite movie and after 15 minutes of watching, a QR code just appears with a message that says, "Scan here to download the rest of the movie." Some might argue that, well, you should have Googled it before you bought it, but I don't think I should have to consult Google to know whether or not I can actually play a game off a disc. Like, come on. So yeah, fuck Microsoft and ZeniMax, and don't buy physical copies of Indiana Jones and Doom the Dark Ages.
Now you've done it. You've made me turn my chair.
Anyways, apologies for the delays between videos again. There's been a lot going on for me personally in the last few months, unfortunately, but hopefully I'll be able to get back into a more consistent rhythm of making videos. I'm working on a retrospective for the PS2 game Black as we speak, along with part 2 of my Jak and Daxter retrospective, so expect those in the next few weeks. So stay tuned.